สวัสดีค่ะท่านผู้ชมทุกท่านวันนี้นะคะเรามีคุณ Janet Perumal นะคะซึ่งเป็น Investment Director จาก Wellington Management นะคะซึ่งวันนี้ก็จะมาพูดคุยกับเรานะคะเกี่ยวกับกอง Global Healthcare Fund ซึ่งเป็นกองนะคะที่กองทุน BCARE แล้วก็ BCARE RMF ของเราเนี่ยไปลงทุนนะคะ Good morning
Good morning
It's a pleasure to have you here
Thank you for having us
Why should we invest in Global Healthcare Fund? Why Global Healthcare theme?
Okay, well, put simply, healthcare is something that affects all of us, and with the sector, there are a number of core secular tailwinds that affect the sector at the moment. Everyone knows about demographics and globalization. So, first of all, the world is aging, and as the population ages, healthcare spending also increases with aging. So today, 1 in 10 people are aged above the age of 60. By 2050, that's 1 in 5 people. So that's a significant increase in people that are aging. But what is more important is that as you age, the amount of money you spend on healthcare also increases. So a recent survey found that when you look at the percentage of annual expenditure on healthcare relative to total annual expenditure in the US, people aged above 65 spend more than 100% more than people aged between 45 and 64. So that's a direct correlation in terms of healthcare spending. So that's going to be a significant tailwind for the sector. Secondly, globalization. So with the emerging markets, rising income levels, more and more people are spending money on healthcare. So that's going to be another catalyst. In addition, Western lifestyle-related diseases such as diabetes and heart disease will also become more prevalent in emerging markets. And spending in emerging markets on healthcare will grow at a double-digit rate relative to Western economies. So that's going to be another catalyst for the healthcare sector. But probably more importantly, and what we're really excited about, is the innovation that's going on in the sector. Innovation on two fronts. There's innovation on the biopharmaceutical, where we're in a new stage of drug discoveries which are affecting the market. And then also in the way innovation in the way we deliver healthcare worldwide. And a key example of that is the Affordable Care Act in the US, which is the largest market in the US in terms of healthcare spending. And there you're seeing more and more people coming into healthcare because of the insured people coming in, and that's increasing the spending on healthcare. So overall, we expect that there'll be long secular tailwinds for the healthcare sector going forward.
Oh, I'm sure many people do like healthcare stock, but if you look at the valuation, do you think it's expensive?
Absolutely. That's a question that we get quite often. So valuations have risen in the last 5 years, but you need to think about where valuations were before that. So putting that in a historical context, 2009 was a historical low for valuations in the healthcare sector. And basically for the preceding 5 to 7 years, healthcare basically traded sideways. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, in terms of the research and development and the pipelines for healthcare companies, there was nothing that was actually going on. There was a lot of Me Too drugs, no true innovation, and so therefore the sector was not rewarded. Secondly, there was a lot of worries about a patent cliff, which is basically generic competition coming into the market and eroding revenue generation of these companies. And then there was also a worry about the Affordable Care Act in the US healthcare system. And that also had a bit of an overhang or negative sentiment with the sector. And finally, the global financial crisis that also reduced spending on healthcare. So the healthcare didn't do much for the early 2000s. And then what we've seen since about late 2009 and 2010 is we've seen the sector start to re-rate and outperform the broader market. And the reasons for that is really just that we are at this early stage of an innovation cycle, which is really exciting. And then we also are seeing more consolidation activity within the sector, which is also spurring positive investor sentiment. And then also the earnings power that the sector is generating is also increased, and it's being received positively. And finally, the Affordable Care Act was enacted in 2010, and that's given investors a little bit more stability or perceived stability with the sector. And so that's all of those things have contributed to the valuations going up. But we believe that valuations are still fair because now the sector is actually trading at its long-term average premium to the MSCI World, which is about 1.1 times. So valuations are fair, but we believe that there's a long runway of growth for the sector going forward.
And it's now the right timing to get into healthcare stocks?
Because of a few different things. So looking firstly at biopharmaceuticals, as I've alluded to earlier, we're at the early stage of an innovation cycle. How did this innovation cycle start? Basically in late 2003, the human genome was basically decoded, but no one actually knew what to do with that information until very recently. And now we're starting to see the onset of new drug discoveries based on genetics. And I can perhaps give you some examples of that. So probably the one that's most talked about at the moment in the market is something called immuno-oncology, and it's a new way of treating cancer. So previously, cancer cells in our body weren't recognized by our immune system, and scientists were quite perplexed as to why this was happening. And they've now discovered that there's something called checkpoint inhibitors, which prevent our immune system from recognizing cancer cells as toxic. Immuno-oncology is a new way of treating cancer, and literally it just takes the brakes off your immune system to be able to recognize cancer cells and allow your body to fight it naturally. So it's a whole new way of treating cancer. And the output of that is, for example, with something like lung cancer, where previously survival rates were about 5%, immuno-oncology drugs on the market are now increasing survival rates to about 20 to 25%, which is significant. And then melanoma, which is a type of skin cancer, the survival rates now are closer to 80 or 90% just because of this new way of treating cancer called immuno-oncology. But it's not just looking at cancer, there's innovation going across multiple therapeutic categories based on genetics. Another example is cholesterol. So scientists have now been able to understand populations that have got a low inclination towards cholesterol, and then they're able to mimic this predisposition to low cholesterol and then put those drugs through trials and come out with drugs. And some of it's estimated that the survival rates or the cardiovascular significance there would be less than 50% or more than 50%. So some really interesting innovation we're seeing in hepatitis C and cystic fibrosis. So a lot of reasons for the team to be excited. And then I can talk to you about some of the other subsectors within healthcare services. There, as I was talking to you about the Affordable Care Act in the US, which is the world's largest healthcare market. Basically, you've got 30 million new lives that were previously uninsured that are now insured, and that's bringing volumes into the system. And so this is affecting hospitals and retail pharmacies, health insurance, and so all of those things are also catalysts for the healthcare sector going forward. And then finally, medical technology, where innovation is happening in terms of being able to do not just incremental innovation, but actual meaningful innovation, where hospitals can improve their efficiency at a better cost. And so all of these things are sort of reasons why we're excited about the sector, and we think it warrants a long-term holding.
What are the risks associated with investing in the fund?
So the risks associated with the healthcare sector in general relates to, I think more recently, pricing pressure for specialty drugs. So there's been a lot of news flow about drugs such as Solvadi and how the US government has been treating that. So there will be more intense pressure on prices for drugs that are priced at sort of exorbitant levels. In addition, maybe just a slowdown in the pace of regulatory approval by the FDA. And then finally, just any sort of negative news flow or, the ever very low probability, but always a possibility of, some negative event around a high-profile drug candidate not meeting its endpoint or not actually satisfying the clinical trials. That could also make the sector wobble a bit. But yeah, those are kind of the key risks with the sector.
Can you talk us through some of your top holdings?
Absolutely. So some of the top holdings that we have in the portfolio play to some of the key themes that the team is interested in at the moment, where we see a lot of potential runway for growth. So as Ali mentioned previously, immuno-oncology, which is a new way of treating cancer. Some of the top holdings that we have within the portfolio play to this theme. They're sort of large cap pharmaceutical companies that have a very rich pipeline, and the drugs that they have currently within the pipeline are playing to various combinations of immuno-oncology drugs. But these companies also have the drugs that are currently on the market, which are catering towards things such as melanoma as well as lung cancer. So that's a key theme in the top holdings of the portfolio. Another key theme within the top holdings of the portfolio is hospital operating companies, especially in the US. So a name that we currently like a lot is a large hospital operator in the US that has got a large number of hospitals. And really the theme here is that, as these 30 million previously uninsured lives come into the system, hospitals will be a key beneficiary of this theme, because as people get insured, the first thing they do is go and get checked out at the hospital, and so we'll start seeing an uptick in earnings for these kinds of companies. So that's another key theme in the top holdings within the portfolio.
Oh, last question. Some people would say buying stock is easy, but do you have stock selling strategy? Do you consider your exit strategy prior to buying a company?
Sure. So the fund is managed on a bottom-up basis, and so everything is on a stock-by-stock basis. And our global industry analysts who manage this fund and contribute to the research on this fund have been looking at their sectors for more than 20 years each. So the way they think about companies as they buy into them is they're thinking about a target price that they'd like to achieve. So we will sell the stock when that target price is achieved, or we will sell the stock if there's some kind of negative unforeseen event that derails the investment thesis. Or finally, we'll sell the stock if we find a better relative idea with more attractive upside relative to the idea that's already in the portfolio. So yes.
Thank you so much for today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.